What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday. Hope your weekend is treating you well. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. My name is Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. I know this is a Packers podcast, and we are going to focus on the Packers 99.9% of the time, but within the realm of the Packers sphere is, of course, their nearest and dearest opponents, which, of course, includes the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears. So while we're always going to keep a very keen eye on the Packers, we also need to keep our friends close and our enemies closer. So today I wanted to take a look specifically at the Chicago Bears with some of the quarterback rumors that are out there, including a Deshaun Watson, including a Russell Wilson, and see what are the odds and what's the reality that the Bears could ultimately end up with one of these very high-profile quarterbacks, which you would think would not make things better for Green Bay, would certainly make things harder. And ultimately, what that would mean for the Packers in the division if Green Bay was able to acquire one of those two premier quarterbacks. So that is going to be the crux of my topic today. And let's start off by taking a look at Chicago and why they're in this position right now, or why they would want to go out and acquire a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson, besides the obvious fact that they don't have a quarterback, and these are two of the best quarterbacks in all of football. So that's the low-hanging fruit here, right? But it's worth noting that the Bears are in a very interesting situation, and what I would argue is a really bad situation for the state of Chicago football, which is a good situation for Green Bay Packers football. One of the worst situations that you can have is a GM and a coach who are in a must-win now situation and have the autonomy to do everything in their power to try to win now, because if they don't, they're both getting fired. So Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, as we speak, are in a position where they have to win this season. They know that. I know that. You know that. The fans know that. The McCaskies know that. All of them know that. It is a must-win situation for Chicago or they're out. So they don't have a quarterback. And I know they have, Nick Foles and, Trubisky's a free agent. They don't have that guy that they can count on and say, we feel comfortable going into the season and think that we can go to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game. Maybe they can get in the playoffs, they did last season, but have any sort of confidence that they can actually go and have a above and beyond successful season and maybe win a playoff game or two. That right now seems out of the realm of possibility, especially when you consider Allen Robinson seems to at least have a foot out of the door in Chicago. We'll see what happens there, but today the focus is on the quarterback. So they are in a position where they have to make an all-in sort of move. You talk as a Packer fan wanting to see the Packers go all in because that Aaron Rodgers window is closing. Well, the Bears have to go all in because their GM and coach need it to happen. And of course, again, they just don't have a really true starting quarterback on their roster. So that makes things much more complicated as well. The other reason why this is a topic today is because if you've been paying attention, Russell Wilson said that he's not interested in a trade, but if they were to trade him, he named the four teams that he'd be interested in going to in that situation. And for some reason, unbeknownst to me, the Bears are on that list, which is certainly somewhat surprising. I don't know why. I haven't dug too far into it to know why Chicago would be on his list, but the Bears are one of the teams that is on his list that he would potentially like to go to if Seattle did trade him. And of course, right now the Houston Texans are, firm in their fact that they're not trading Deshaun Watson. Well, Deshaun Watson seems even firmer in his current stance that he is not going to play for the Houston Texans. And ultimately, I believe Deshaun Watson's going to win out in that situation and that he will play with another team this upcoming season and for the foreseeable future. So both of these quarterbacks are on the move, and at least one of them has made their team aware that, that Chicago would be a friendly confines for them. And again, I think Wilson will ultimately resolve itself. I think he'll end up staying in Seattle. But at this point, who knows? Maybe they end up swapping for each other in some capacity. But it's at least worth taking a look at how this could happen for Chicago if they could be in the conversations for either player. Because again, this would affect the division. It would affect the Packers. So what would Chicago have to offer either of these teams? And I think the first thing you have to realize is that if either Seattle or Houston is trading with the Chicago Bears to make this deal, to trade either Watson or Wilson to Chicago, it would have to be a situation where they're going full rebuild because they're not getting a quarterback in return. Now, maybe they could flip a quarterback in another trade. Maybe it could be a rare NFL 3-team deal or something to that effect. But they're not getting, what are they going to get Nick Foles back and think that they can compete? Probably not. And they're not getting a premium pick from the Bears to actually get a quarterback, a premium quarterback in this draft. And even if they did, that's probably not helping them compete in the immediate future. So if they're making this deal with Chicago, they are looking for young, cheap, controllable deals and premium draft picks. And let's start by going over the fact that Chicago does not have premium draft picks. They're picking 20th overall in this draft. And you have to know that if you're trading them, either Wilson or Watson, they're probably picking in the 20s over the course of the next 2 seasons. You can only give 3 first-round draft, the next 3 years of first-round draft picks in any given deal. You can't go past 3 years when trading future draft picks. So it could be this year's, 2022, and 2023. That's as far as they can go. And if they have a Watson or a Wilson, you're expecting those to be in the 20s. So either of these teams would expect to get 3 picks, 3 first-round picks in the 20s, which isn't going to get you those premium picks that you're looking for. So you're going to have to sweeten that pot by giving young, controllable players. Well, Chicago doesn't exactly have a ton of those. David Montgomery, but he's a running back. Darnell Mooney's nice, but he's not the player that you're, just oogling over, hoping that you can somehow get your hands on Darnell Mooney. Jalen Johnson, really nice young corner. He would be a really nice tradable piece for them. Cole Kmet, second-round pick tight end from a season ago, certainly has some value. He's young, he's talented, but didn't do a whole bunch this past season. Roquan Smith, name is bigger than the play on the field so far throughout the course of his career, and he's not, he's in the later stages of his rookie deal, so he doesn't necessarily open up a huge window for you either. And again, those 3, first-round picks aren't going to be premium picks. They could maybe look to flip a Khalil Mack, but again, the team that's trading for him, either the Texans or the Seahawks, probably aren't looking for that player to win now because they just traded away their Pro Bowl quarterback to make this move. They're probably not looking to win now. So Khalil Mack may not be worth as much to either of these teams as they would to the Bears in this situation. I don't think Nick Foles has any value. So how are they going to put together this package? And especially when you look at the fact that if Seattle gets to the point where they have to trade Russell Wilson, or the Texans get to the point where they have to trade Deshaun Watson, there are other teams that have much, much more ammunition to acquire a player of their caliber. You look at a team like the Miami Dolphins. They've got pick 3 and 18 this year. They've got future first-round picks, including a bunch of picks that they're still collecting from the Houston Texans that they could throw in a ton of deals. They have a ton of young talent. They could throw in Tua Tagovailoa as a potential premium quarterback that's still young and talented and has developmental potential. That is way more than anything that Chicago could offer. How about the Philadelphia Eagles? They have their first-round picks. They have number 6 this year, which could get one of those premium quarterbacks. They could also acquire Jalen Hurts from the Eagles. Second-round pick, showed flashes a season ago. And they also have all those picks that they just got. Well, they got 2 picks from the Colts in that Carson Wentz trade that they can also add to sweeten the deal. Those are just 2 examples of 2 teams that have way more ammunition, better players, better picks, better everything to offer than what the Chicago Bears would have to offer. So it is incredibly unlikely to me that even if Chicago got to the fact that they were going to go all in for Deshaun Watson or a Russell Wilson, that they could outbid some of these other teams that have really exclusive packages that they'd be able to offer to either the Texans or the Seahawks. And if only one of them end up being available, which I think Watson will, again, I don't think Wilson will, but we'll see, who knows. If only one of them's available, it just makes it that much higher where maybe you have these 2 teams like the Dolphins and like the Eagles bidding against each other, which makes it even harder for the Bears to get in that conversation. So let's flip this a bit. Let's just say, for some crazy sake, that the Bears do get the winning bid. Let's say, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson is traded and the Bears are able to put together the winning bid for the players. What does that look like? Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they gave 3 future first-round picks this year, next year, and the following year, a couple second-round picks. Let's say Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and David Montgomery. All right. That's ultimately what was decided upon. Whether that's within the realm of enough or too much, it doesn't matter. Let's just, for the sake of the argument, let's say that that's what they gave up. What are you looking at for the core of this football team? You have, let's say it's Russell Wilson, right? You have a 32-year-old Russell Wilson, a 34-year-old Jimmy Graham, 31-year-old Akeem Hicks, 30-year-old Khalil Mack, Kyle Fuller's 29, Robert Quinn is 30, Danny Trevathan is 30. You don't exactly have a young roster, especially after just trading these guys away. Now you're devoid of first and second round picks this year and in the following seasons. How are you going to build this team up? You're not in a great salary cap situation. Allen Robinson, as I mentioned, has a foot out the door. Even if you can get him back, I think he's only 27, but it's not like he's super young. Maybe you open a 1-year window, maybe 2, but they just don't have the depth. They don't have the money. They don't have the picks. They don't have enough to build this up. I think you can make a strong argument, even with guys like Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith, Jalen Johnson, who are still on the team in this scenario. I don't think that Chicago has enough from a depth standpoint and an overall talent, especially on offense. You just traded away Montgomery and Mooney and Kmet. Even if you get Allen Robinson back, what is Tariq Cohen, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, Allen Robinson, Jimmy Graham, and a makeshift offensive line enough on offense with a defense that's good but has shown decline over the course of the past couple seasons? That's not a Super Bowl winning team. Does it give Green Bay some headaches? Yes. Could they win the division? Yes. Are they a playoff team? Absolutely. But I don't think it puts Chicago over the top. And maybe it's enough to save Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy their job, and maybe that's good enough for them. But if I'm a Bears fan, that scenario ultimately freaks the heck out of me because I think you're stuck. I think you're in no man's land at that situation. And to be fair, I think Chicago might be in no man's land no matter what. But even if you get one of those premium players, because you traded away all your youth and your draft picks, I just don't see an avenue. I think you have maybe a slight opportunity in 2021 to make that 1-year run at things. And maybe you can go out and get a couple cheap veterans this year to bolster that roster and bolster your depth. But man, counting on a bunch of 30-year-old plus players for a 1-year run to try to save your job, and if that goes wrong, you're just screwed in the future. I don't see that as good. And frankly, I think what you end up with, like if it's Russell Wilson, I think you basically end up like with a team like the Seahawks the last couple seasons. Good, but not good enough. Same thing with the Texans, right? Like they've had good receivers, David Johnson at running back. They've had some players on offensive line, J.J. Watt, Whitney Merciless, Justin Reed. They've had some good players, but nowhere near enough to actually compete anywhere near a Super Bowl level caliber. So even if, and as I mentioned before, I don't think Chicago has remotely enough to get in the conversation for either of those two players. And even if they do, they're going to have to give up so much that they're left with a team that I don't think can compete, at least at the highest levels, for an NFC championship or certainly a Super Bowl. So would it be somewhat bothersome if they would get Wilson or Deshaun Watson? Yes. I think, you'd have to at least be aware of them for the next couple seasons as potentially, being serious contenders to take the NFC North throne away from Green Bay. No question about that. But I think long term, as you're looking at this, it gives Chicago maybe a 1 or 2 year window at best, even in the crazy scenario where it happens. And I don't think that they can get to the promised land with the roster that they would currently have built, even with one of those two all-pro caliber quarterbacks. So I think you can rest easy if you're Green Bay. And if I had to make a bold prediction today as to where Chicago ends up at quarterback, I think Sam Darnold, is certainly an option. Gardner Minshew could be an option. Maybe bringing back Nick Foles for next season could be an option. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they ultimately get Mac Jones. I think that could be kind of not best of both worlds is the wrong way to put it, but maybe a quarterback that they feel, comfortable with, that could come in on day one and actually run their offense, with an offense that was centered around David Montgomery. If they could get Allen Robinson back, Jimmy Graham, and a very strong defense, I think you could maybe say that he could lead you to the playoffs, right? And in the meantime, it buys you time if you could get that 7 seed and say, hey, we just made the playoffs. We have a rookie quarterback we really like. Maybe that buys you time if you're Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. But overall, this is not a great situation to be in if you're a Chicago Bear fan. Like I said, probably a pretty decent position to be in if you're a Green Bay Packer fan. I think Chicago is very close to purgatory. Even if they go, all in, I don't think they have enough, and I don't think they have the ability to sell and go all out, if you will, and trade their premium players for draft picks like they need to, because it would cost Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy their jobs. That's going to do it for me. Thanks for checking this out. I really appreciate it. Make sure to check out the audio version of the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go, and the Bears still suck.